From Yellowhammer News, this is One Day at a Time, presented by Longleaf Recovery and Wellness. Join me, Laurie, as I speak with industry leaders about the challenges and solutions surrounding substance use disorder and mental health issues facing so many people here in Alabama. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of One Day at a Time, where we're putting a priority on having important conversations about substance use disorder and mental health in the state of Alabama. I'm your host, Laurie Dew. Joining us on this episode is Frank Long, the Director of Development at the Lovelady Center here in Birmingham. Frank, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Laurie. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, we've been looking forward to this for a long time. And I guess I would want to start by you telling us a little bit about the Lovelady Center and what it is.
I love starting there because that's what I do. As Director of Development, I often get asked, what do you do, right? And while the answer might be simple, like I raise money and I raise awareness, what I really get to do is I get a front row seat to see regenerative power of God. I get to see what God is doing in countless lives every day. So the Lovelady Center has a bit of a reputation problem. Most everybody, at least in Birmingham and probably throughout Alabama, maybe has heard of us. But in even talking with your producer this morning, what they've heard of and what they think of oftentimes is the thrift store. Now, thank God for our two thrift stores. They not only clothe our ladies, but they provide 65 cents of every dollar we need. And this year we'll need close to $12 million. So we operate on a shoestring for the amount of people we serve. But the center itself, it is an amazing place. Very few people realize it's the largest long-term Christ-centered recovery facility in the United States for women and their children. So as of this morning, there were 493 of those women and 126 of their children. And while they're with us anywhere from 9 months to about a year and a half, 9 months is the shortest amount of time you can earn the necessary credit hours in order to graduate, they're learning all kind of life skills to be able to rebuild their life and return to society as well-equipped women of God. Mm-hmm. So the program itself is very comprehensive, using evidence-based wraparound services and continuums of care that starts with case management and counseling for each and every lady. And there's really no cookie-cutter approach. Out of those 496 ladies, they come to us for a variety of reasons. Many have been displaced due to addiction, incarceration, domestic violence, and homelessness, or some combination thereof. So when I mention incarceration, we are proud that we have the state's only supervised reentry program from the women's prison, Julia Tutlauer's prison, that's not for profit. So what that means is if you have between 6 and 12 months left on your prison sentence, you can serve it at the center.
And why do you think that's so important for women who have been incarcerated to finish their sentence at Lovelady Center rather than just staying in the prison?
It's important because many of these women, through no fault of their own, and then oftentimes very much through fault of their own and poor choices, but oftentimes they didn't know any better and they were never taught. They didn't grow up in great environments. You know, you talk to ladies that come from broken homes and trauma and abuse and neglect and generational curses of addiction. And we're hoping to change that cycle, to break that cycle, for them to be the last in their family that has to suffer from addiction and the lifestyle, the circumstances that surround that. And it's just giving them oftentimes a first chance. You know, oftentimes when ladies are court ordered to Lovelady, they have no idea what it is. So they might see it as the last house on the block. They might see it as a place where all hope is gone. But they arrive there and they quickly realize that maybe their life is just starting. And it's a place that's full of hope. Laurie, I'd like to share a story with you. So recently, I had the honor of hosting two associate commissioners of the Department of Corrections. And, I gave them the standard tour. I'm talking about all the various phases and the different pillars where the ladies have to earn credit hours. And at the end of the tour, we met in our coffee shop. And we met with 10 ladies who are currently in the supervised reentry program or had recently just EOS, which is end of sentence, but chosen to remain with us. And those associate commissioners asked each of those ladies, they said, what did y'all think about the Lovelady Center when you first got here? And a couple of the ladies were looking down at the floor and they looked up and said, well, can we be honest? And the commissioner said, well, of course. She said, we hated it.
Oh, no.
And then another lady said, yeah, we hated it. And I thought, uh-oh, this is not a good look. Like, where is this going, right?
Right.
Well, she went on to talk about how she was so used to her little corner at Tutwiler Prison and being isolated and being scared and just living in defense mode that when she walked into a place as big and as welcoming as Lovelady, especially when she heard the words, I love you, repeatedly from staff, it was just overwhelming. In fact, one of the ladies said, my own family never told me they love me.
Oh.
And then both these associate commissioners started crying. I got tears in my eyes and I thought, all right, well, this is the best negative review, that I've ever heard. So it was truly, a positive.
And for you to see that moment and share that moment with them, that must have meant the world to you.
Absolutely. It did. And you know what it reminds me of is that people can take their darkness or they can take what they thought was their worst or their greatest liability, right? Maybe that prison sentence, whatever they did to land them there, and turn it into their greatest asset to help others. And I get to witness that every day. And it's truly awesome.
Your heart must be full in this job. You see the worst of the worst. You see people who are terrified, isolated, who have been, as you put it, in the corner of a jail cell. Mm-hmm. They come to Lovelady and they get a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, and they blossom and grow. And what does it do for your spirit, for your heart, for your own faith?
I mean, it's amazing. I am surrounded by walking miracles every day. We have a staff of 148 full-time employees. About 75 of them I get the pleasure of working with at the center every day. And to hear them tell their stories of redemption and recovery and family reunification is just so amazing. One colleague is coming to mind in particular. I work with a young lady named Jael, and Jael is our full-time dental hygienist. And on December 5th, she is sitting for the DAT, which is the dental entrance exam for dental school. And, oftentimes I hear her give her testimony when I'm giving a tour. And she arrived at the Lovelady Center in handcuffs just 5 or 6 short years ago. And when you look at somebody so full of life that has dedicated their life to helping others, it's truly inspiring.
And, I think what people may not understand about those of us who have suffered from addiction in the past and who are now in recovery is that we go on to do great things. That is a perfect example. So here's a woman who was brought into Lovelady in handcuffs, and now she's getting her dental certificate. She's going to be a dentist, a full-blown dentist.
Yes.
Wow. Talk about a turnaround. And that's an important message that I want to share is that those of us who are in recovery, we go on to achieve great things. We make great employees. We become tax-paying members of society. We contribute. And that's something that you all at Lovelady do a great job with. You provide so much training to these women so that they can go back out into the world and achieve. What are some of the programs you all offer there?
Great point. And one that sticks out that's kind of new, we offer an auto mechanic class to our ladies because, we've always taught a wide variety of life skills. In fact, every 6 weeks, there's between 40 and 60 classes that are being offered. And while many are studying the word and scripture, others are evidence-based things like conscious discipline, epic parenting, anger management. There's always a bank in the building teaching financial literacy. But we've gone a step further. We operate a full education department. And the first question you are asked on your education assessment is, do you have your GED? And if you don't, it is Lovelady law that you are going to sit for portions of it. So far this year, we have 20 GEDs. We have a lot of certificate programs from cosmetology to paralegal. I mentioned the new auto mechanic class. We teach computer coding. We teach UAB teaches a computer lit 101 and 102. So there's a whole new area that is opened up to so many ladies. Maybe so many ladies that were told their entire life that they wouldn't amount to much, or they have a learning disability. But maybe they were never even given a chance, and they get in there and they want to continue their education and see what opportunities are available after Lovelady, because at the end of the day, we are a transitional facility. We don't, even though we are 9 months to a year and a half, and that's considered long term in our industry, the goal is for them to graduate and take next steps.
So earlier you mentioned the reasons why women end up at Lovelady, and that's substance use disorder, incarceration, homelessness, and domestic violence. Sometimes, is it a combination of these things?
Absolutely. And, I've talked to ladies just anecdotally all the time that maybe experience all of those things. There's others who it might just be they're there because of grief, right? There's a lady that works in my department in the development office, and she's there for grief after she lost several people that were close to her. So, like I mentioned, it's not cookie cutter.
When you mentioned the woman who suffered a great amount of grief, did that lead to certain behavior that led to homelessness? Or was it grief where she felt suicidal, or she just needed a safe place to go?
Yeah, in this particular case, I think it was crippling depression. There was no substance use, but the crippling depression, because of that, she lost jobs, and she was either homeless or on the verge of being homeless.
You told me that Lovelady is not a halfway house, it's a whole way house. And I love that because people aren't half people. We are whole people. And when we recover, we really become whole. If you could talk about that for a minute.
Sure. So our founder, Dr. Brenda Lovelady Spawn, who everybody refers to as Miss Brenda, is a firecracker, and she is truly a remarkable woman. But many years ago, she was volunteering at the Birmingham Work Release, which is the day reporting center for women getting out of prison. And after she volunteered there for over a year, she kept seeing the same faces return. And she would always ask the ladies, hey, what happened? I thought you weren't going to return to prison. And they would say, Miss Brenda, I was given $10 and a bus ticket to the same hometown and, had no resources, no job, no family. And I went back to my old ways. And Brenda kept hearing about these halfway houses and how ineffective most of them were. And that's when the thought crossed her mind that God does not do things halfway. What these women really needed was a whole way house. So that's been the concept from the beginning, treating both mind, body, and spirit, because we believe without a spiritual awakening, then it's quite possible to return to the mode you've operated in. And typically, for most of our ladies, that mode and that their solution has been drugs and alcohol. People always talk about drugs and alcohol being their problem. Well, don't get me wrong, it causes a lot of problems, But really, that's kind of a wrong-headed way to look at it, because so oftentimes it's been their solution and their only solution. And so they don't have the skills to cope with everyday life. And those are the things we're trying to teach.
What would you say is the secret sauce to the success of Lovelady and the services that you provide?
That's a great question, and I get asked that a lot. From the perspective of science, I think just having ladies long term, more than a year, according to SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse Mental Health Agency that studies these type things, they say that 75% of people who enter recovery are going to relapse in the first year. Well, if you can make it to a year, you have a four-time better shot to make it to 5 years. If you can make it to 5 years, their stats bear out that you have a less than 15% chance of relapsing. So having them there long term is one thing. Another thing, Miss Brenda one time was walking through the center with the head of the Department of Corrections. She was bragging about the programs, and at the end, he looked around, he said, this looks great, but it seems to me the inmates are running the asylum. And he said, no offense.
Sure.
She said, well, no offense taken, but if I don't hire them, who will? Right? And so that's kind of been our mantra, is giving people purpose, right? Letting them find their purpose, because nobody cares more about the well-being than somebody who's been through exactly what these ladies have been through. And then last, but I probably should have said it first and foremost, is leading the ladies to Jesus Christ. And so while they're with us, they're going to hear the message that a personal relationship with Jesus is sufficient to overcome all your problems. And they're going to hear it a lot. They have daily devotions every morning at 7 a.m., church service Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. And even though we know we're not going to reach everybody with that message, we hope we do more than plant a seed. But the important thing is you are still going to have a sense of accountability, responsibility, and community. Because at the end of the day, the opposite of addiction is connection with God, ourselves, and others. So the community at Lovelady is very strong.
I like that approach, the connection with God, the connection to others, and that connection providing the community, the accountability, the purpose, achieving things that are tangible, the fact that Lovelady is giving them hope. And is it the case that for some of the women, this is the first exposure to God and to Jesus Christ?
Yes, absolutely. And we have ladies from all different walks of life. And while, several grew up in church or maybe going to church with their grandmother, others grew up in, broken households where that was never an option. In fact, I think of this one story recently. We had a movie producer rent buses and take the ladies all to the movies. And we had two ladies, one in her 20s and one in her 30s, start crying because they'd never been to the movies.
Oh.
Laurie, I've met people that have never had a chance to go to the beach, but never going to the movies, that just, it blows my mind. That's not abject poverty, it's abject neglect. So if you've never been to the movies, good chance you aren't going to church either.
That is an excellent point. And that blows my mind, quite frankly. We take these things for granted.
Sure.
Going to the movies, now it feels like everything is on a streaming platform. But, prior to 8 or 10 years ago, you just go to the movies. You do it from childhood. So pointing out something that seems to the rest of us so basic, almost like, all right, of course you go to the movies. You're right. That is neglect. And the fact that people living here in the state of Alabama, they've never seen the beach or the ocean when it's just a few hours away, that I don't really understand. And perhaps that's because of a privileged upbringing. I don't know. It just seems crazy to me that someone might live 2 hours from a beach, but have never seen it. So I think what's so great about you sharing this stuff is that you are reminding them that their life isn't over. It's just beginning when they come to Lovelady.
Yeah. And that's a constant thing that we have to remind them because, while you're under our roof, our care, our rules, people who suffer from addiction often don't know their craving structure because they've been isolated for so long. So oftentimes they do really well with a lot of rules. It's when you get ready to leave that the real work begins, and you may think you're ready, but it could be a time where when you go from all rules to very few rules, it could be a time where you struggle. And that's why our aftercare program is so vitally important.
Tell me about that aftercare program. Does it happen on the premises of Lovelady, or is it outside the actual building where the 500 women
Yeah,
live?
so it happens on and off, and that's excellent questions. So right now we have about 225 ladies enrolled in the aftercare program, which means they are still receiving one or all of our services. If it's one, it's typically just drug testing, but they all still have case managers. About half those ladies live in apartments in the East Lake area that are rented exclusively to our grads, or one of the few homes that the Lovelady Center owns. And sadly, we still have some grads living in our building. Now, we are aggressively working, trying to figure out solutions and more aftercare housing. But we love that they're staying plugged up because when they leave, a woman's biggest barrier to employment is going to be both childcare and transportation. We provide both of those things to our graduates. So we operate what's called the Kid Zone Daycare, and about 35 of our graduates drop off their children there every day so they can go to their jobs or get ready for their next steps. And, speaking of next steps, often they need a little help. Maybe they need help paying for a car, or paying for a college class, or paying an old power bill, or paying a first and last month's rent for that apartment. We have a sister charity called Portraits of Hope that scholarships all those things and provides between $75,000 and $100,000 a year directly to our graduates for those kind of needs, which has been a wonderful, wonderful partnership.
You're right. Those are the things that you don't think about. All of those expenses add up to a lot. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Longleaf Recovery and Wellness. Longleaf Recovery and Wellness is elevating the standard for addiction and mental health treatment in Alabama, offering exceptional and personalized care at centers in Birmingham, Huntsville, and Baldwin County. Life-saving programs offered at Longleaf provide a path to real change and support for a restored life long-term. Learn more about Longleaf Recovery and Wellness at longleafcenters.com. A big thank you to our sponsors, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama and Southern Ketamine and Wellness. A few months ago, I was lucky enough to take a tour of the Lovelady Center, and I was blown away, Frank. This isn't just some little building. It is a massive structure that feels like its own self-contained city. So if you would describe to our listeners what happens when you walk in, what goes on there, if you could describe a day in the life of the Lovelady Center and everything that's in there.
Oh gosh,
if you have time.
This is a challenge, and it's something I've never been asked because it's one of those places that to believe it, you have to see it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do my best.
Okay.
I'm going to act like Eli Gold describing an Alabama football game, and I'm going to try to paint the picture. So when you walk in, the building is 100 years old. It's an old hospital. It was the old East End Memorial Hospital. And before that, it was a women's dormitory for Howard College, which is today Sanford University. But it's 280,000 square feet. So it's an enormous facility.
Wow.
So when you walk in, immediately you can feel a presence. And it's a bustling place. So when you walk into the Hebrews coffee shop is what we call it. to try and create kind of that Starbucks experience or that sense of community that I talked about a little bit earlier. We've got an enormous worship area, which can seat all the ladies and guests for graduations, church services, special speakers, special events. I mentioned the daycare. Any given day, we have about 75 children between 1 and 5 years old, really between 1 month old and 5 years old. We have about 10 or 12 infants down there every day. We've got a beauty salon. Our kitchen is one of the busiest places you'll ever see. That kitchen serves 1,800 meals every single day of the year. So
Wow.
we have 42 ladies doing their job readiness assignment, working in that kitchen. The transportation department is equally as busy. We have 20 vehicles that drive over 1 million miles per year, taking ladies to and from appointments at Christ Health, DHR, legal, to get their driver's license, to and from the Clay and Irondale thrift stores to work. We have our own school bus that takes our school-age children to Miracle Academy, which is a private Christian school in Midfield. So it's really a city within a city. Sometimes I walk in the mailroom and just see the Amazon boxes just stacked floor to ceiling. And it's just like, wow, this place really makes no sense on paper. But it's so amazing what God is doing in the walls of that facility. And if you've never been, of course, I want to encourage you and invite you to come down so I can give you a tour and show you all the amazing things that are happening within the walls.
And there is a dental office.
Yes. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So I talked a little bit about our hygienist earlier, but dental is a need that a lot of people don't think about. If you're poor, health insurance is one of the first things to go. Maybe you didn't have health insurance since you were a child. And since Alabama has not expanded Medicaid, only about 11% of our ladies actually have insurance. So, and any given day, there's between 60 and 80 ladies waiting to see the dentist for pain-related issues, broken teeth, exposed nerves. And so this year, we'll pull in excess of 1,500 teeth because the first thing we do is try to get them out of pain. But the second thing we do, remember we are a whole way house, is we want to be able to restore their smile. Because, Laurie, if you can't smile, you can't get a job. You don't have confidence. And this year we'll do over 300 pair of partials and dentures. And when you talk to some of these ladies that come to show off their new smile, the amount of confidence it gives them is just amazing. And so right now we have over 10 dentists and 5 oral surgeons that all volunteer their time, and is such a blessing because oftentimes these ladies don't have another choice in dental care.
So when these women go in there, they might have missing teeth, and eventually they get a new set of teeth and they come out smiling. And I'm picturing it right now, and I'm imagining how big those pearly whites are. And you're right, the smile lets them express how they feel. It gives them confidence for a job interview, or maybe they're seeing their family for the first time in a long time. I mean, that is so, and it's something we all take for granted. Yeah, we have healthy teeth. We smile. That's so important. And I'm glad you highlighted it.
It is. It's absolutely life-changing. And I'm so glad you brought it up because I almost forgot to mention the dental clinic. But it is life-changing when you see that. And I have ladies come to my office all the time, say, look at my new teeth. And just it always brings tears to my eyes. It's so
transformation.
Yes.
In so many ways. The smile is just the beginning. Mm-hmm. But when you and I were talking earlier, you said something that you love is to get before and after pictures of the women when they come in. So there's a picture taken of them when they first enter Lovelady. And then there's a picture when they leave or at some point along their journey. And you say the before and after there's such a stark difference. If you would tell us about that.
Yeah. So every lady, when they come into our intake department and fill out their paperwork, they get an ID badge made, and that's the picture we use for the before. And then if they make it to graduation, we take an after shot, and we have a wall outside the intake department called Prisoner to Princess. And it's just hundreds of these before and afters. In fact, a lot of the ladies on that board are staff now that I get to work with every day. And when I have judges and guardian ad litems and police officers and first responders, they will stay at that board for an extended amount of time because they're so used to seeing the broken and addicted woman. Rarely do they have a chance to see the recovered woman. And it's just so unbelievable. And then I'll point at certain pictures. I always point at this one young lady. She lives in the Shoals in North Alabama. Her name is Jocelyn James. And she ended up donating her kidney to her arresting officer.
What?
I can't not just smile and laugh when I say that, because the story just doesn't even sound believable. But each and every woman
God.
up there has a story that is equally as powerful. And I mean, it's so cool. So cool.
So wait a minute. A woman donated her kidney to her arresting officer. And if you would, what was that like? And their interaction afterwards, that's extraordinary. It's almost like a movie that you would see. And why hasn't a movie been made?
Well, now that's beautiful. I just know the story surface level because we've highlighted it in the past.
I want that movie made, Frank.
But there's so many stories like that. When I tell people, they kind of just spin their head back around. They're like, what did you say?
Yes.
Because it's just, it's stuff you wouldn't believe. And it's just, like I said, at the beginning, I have a front row seat to this every day. And it's exciting and it's inspiring. And, it makes me want to work that much harder to do a really good job, because it's a big responsibility.
It's God's love. When you share these stories, and when I went there myself, I saw it. God is love. The Lovelady Center is love. And you can see God at work in this place. I walked out of there with my spirit soaring and my heart full. And I would encourage anyone listening, go take a tour of Lovelady. It's just incredible. So this leads me to my next question. When you talk about purpose, you have a big purpose. How did you end up at the Lovelady Center?
I'm so glad you asked, because, I feel like everything I've done in my entire life has been preparing me for this moment. And it's truly an honor to be able to represent the women, children, and staff members of the center. But, I grew up in Montgomery, and without getting into my whole life story, I have a wonderful family, and most of them are still in Montgomery. But, I took very much after my father. In fact, I'm named after my father. I'm the third. My father was a very practical man, a man of common sense, but he also had his demons. He was a severe alcoholic and a very functional alcoholic until he wasn't. So he always warned me, the career path he had chosen, like his father before him, my grandfather, was politics. And he said, son, don't ever get into politics. He said, it's a dirty game. If your guy loses, you're out. So, get you a good education. So I got a pretty good education. And then what did I do? I followed in my father's footsteps.
Got into politics.
And so I had some jobs down in Montgomery in state government. And for the longest time, that's where my identity was wrapped up. It was who I knew, because, Laurie, I wanted you to know that I was somebody of substance and that I was somebody important. And, I think the disease of alcoholism and addiction is very genetic. And I'd been warned from an early age, I'd also known intellectually from a very early age that it's something that I struggled with, maybe even worse than my father.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my biggest secret that, you could not find that out. So even though I had these important jobs and, had the Brooks Brothers suits and the Canali jackets, I did not want you to know the real me because I was afraid you wouldn't like me.
Mm.
Finally, that secret was out. And I think I was only fooling myself. I thought for so long that I did this great job and that nobody knew what was going on.
You did a great job of hiding your disease.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that rings true to me too. And I think that is a common thread that all of us who have suffered with alcoholism share.
Sure. But through consequences, through lost jobs, lost friends, relationships that with family that suffered, through legal consequences, the secret was out. And, finally things got so dark for me that I cried out to a God that I wasn't even sure existed or that I believed in. But I still had some sliver of hope. I always had a sliver of hope if I could ever get my act together that life would be worth living. But I thought I could do it on my own. But when I did cry out to God, boy, did he show up in a major way. And that was a little over 5 years ago. And today my life is beautiful. There's so many things I'm immensely grateful for. There were a couple, we talk about gratitude a lot as people in long-term recovery. And I used to hate the word because I found myself in treatment centers sometimes around Thanksgiving, and they were gratitude lists. But today I know what those people are talking about because I'm part of life at last. I can see how my darkness and my darkest days could be used to help others. So I try to do that as often as I can. I sponsor men, and I try to lead them to the power that helped me. And I try to tell them that you can't do it alone.
And you shouldn't do it alone because it will not work.
Sure. But I think each and every one of us, at least the people in recovery I know, are very stubborn and they have to have those experiences. They're going to have to try it again and again and again and fail until they realize, oh, wait a minute. I actually have no control over these outcomes, and I do need some help, and I do need something bigger than myself. And, had it not been for recovery, I never would have met my beautiful wife. We're so excited because come April, we're expecting our first child, and life today is just amazing. The things I get to do, the people I get to meet, people like you. I mean, it's such a blessing.
And congratulations on the baby.
Thank you.
We'll have you back when you have not slept for 6 months.
Okay, I look forward to that.
We'll have you and Nikki on, and you can talk about parenting an infant. But you describe the growth and the transformation that happens during and after recovery, and your initial struggle on that spiritual path. And you're saying that you prayed to a God you weren't sure you believed in, and yet you eventually did. And now you're sharing with others, just as I share with others, that God will see you through everything, and in particular in recovery. And so you are helping others, and you've been sober for many years now. And was that the thing that eventually led you to Lovelady, wanting to take this opportunity? Wow, I have the chance to help so many people. Is that what led you to Lovelady, do you think?
Kind of.
Okay.
I remember years ago, I was shopping at one of their thrift stores, and I was talking to one of the young ladies that worked there. And I said, so y'all are in recovery, right? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, where is the Lovelady Center? And they're like, well, it's over in Eastlake. And I said, well, how many ladies do y'all have there? And I remember them saying something like 400. And I remember when I walked out of that store, I thought, if I could ever get my act together, that might be a really cool place to work one day. So I do remember clearly having that thought many years ago. And lo and behold, a little over 3 years ago, I'm talking to a friend of mine who happens to be a donor and has been for many years at the Lovelady Center. And he said, "Have you ever put any thought into working at the Lovelady Center?" And I thought, funny you asked that. I said, I actually thought about it before. And then he introduced me to John McNeil, who's our chairman of the board. And then the next day I was introduced to Miss Brenda, and I was hired on the spot. And it's been so great for my spiritual growth because it was just shortly before that, before I went to work there, that I came to know Christ. And today that's what my identity is wrapped in, more than who I know or what I think I know, because I'm still real bad at thinking I know everything, thinking I know best, right? But today, at least I can admit that.
Yes, at least you're not in denial about that. As we move towards the end of this interview, which, has been wonderful, and I thank you for being so transparent about your own recovery, because when we choose to share our own stories of recovery, we are creating an environment that's free from shame, where people can feel free to raise their hands and say, you know what, something you just said resonated with me and I need help too. So thank you for that. And as we move towards the final few questions here, I want to ask you where you think we stand in the state of Alabama in terms of the mental health and substance use treatment that we provide Alabamians. How's it going here in the state? Not an easy question.
It's not an easy question. And when you start delving into numbers, it's very easy to get overwhelmed and to get, frankly, a little bit depressed and wonder if you're even scratching the surface. However, in the stories I get to witness and the people I get to know and the people I get to talk to, I know we are. A couple years back, when I was prepping for some of this opioid settlement money that the Attorney General has done such a great job in bringing to the state of Alabama, I was doing some research and I realized that only about half of Alabama's 67 counties even reported their overdose deaths to the CDC. That number shocked me because I thought, so the number we're reporting is actually, it's actually vastly underreported based on what the real number is. But as I travel the state and I talk to lawmakers at the state and federal level, I talk to people like Commissioner Boswell at Mental Health,
who was a guest on this podcast.
Okay, who is doing great work with resources she has. There's people all over the state trying to make a big difference. Now, sadly, a lot of their efforts are hampered by antiquated laws, and that's a whole different discussion for a different day about Alabama's Certificate of Need law and that kind of thing. But I love what Commissioner Boswell has focused on recently is trying to create more crisis centers. Because right now, if you were to walk into, let's say, the Recovery Resource Center in downtown Birmingham because you needed help and you were to fill out an assessment, it may take you several weeks to get into a facility. So crisis centers are needed to bridge that gap, to be able to detox right away, because sadly, when people need help, you have to get them. They have a window that is closing fast. And if you don't get them that help, they may never get it. In fact, they may die before they get it. And it is a life and death. It is that serious.
And thank you for bringing that up. A lot of people think, well, what's a week or two? Well, it's more like a day or two or an hour or two. The problem is that acute. When we spoke recently, you also said we need more solutions and we need good programs, particularly in rural areas. And, I think with the closure of so many hospitals in the Black Belt of Alabama and really all over the state in the poorer areas, we're seeing a lack of proper medical care, and that includes mental health services and addiction services. If you could perhaps speak to that for a moment, your concern about the closure of hospitals and what you'd like to see happen in these rural areas.
Sure. I mean, there are community hospitals that have closed all across this state, even with the influx of American Rescue Plan dollars. And, that's why I hope our state legislature will take a look at the benefits of expanding Medicaid to be able to serve others and to be able to fund vital services. I was talking to somebody who works in the healthcare space the other day, and they were telling me that there's some counties where an ambulance ride to the nearest hospital is over an hour and 15 minutes, even with them speeding down the highway.
That's
So
too long.
not only do they not have a lack of treatment for drugs and alcohol, but they have a lack of services, period. And that's something we're going to have to address if we're going to bulk up our infrastructure and become the state that we all know Alabama can be. And yeah, it's a big challenge. We live in a poor state, but we have so many great people doing so many great things that want to help, but a lot more help is needed. And when you talk about treatment and recovery, for the longest time there had been kind of this treatment versus recovery mentality. There really has to be a treatment plus recovery mentality because, I've talked earlier about the real work begins for a person when they leave, treatment or detox or a long-term rehabilitation facility without having access to those wraparound services. And in the rural areas, oftentimes they have no access. A person doesn't have a fair chance. And what I mean by that is if you've been in addiction or alcoholism for 20 years, typically 10, 15, 17 days, detoxing and getting it out of your system doesn't solve anything other than the body is not physically, craving or addicted to that substance. But that's when the real work begins.
It does. And I'll speak from my own experience. When I was detoxing from alcohol and drugs, my first 2 weeks were dreadful. I had the night sweats, the night terrors. I was nauseous. I've never felt worse in my life. I felt like dying. I thought I was dying. And that was only the beginning. And I really didn't feel great until about 3 months in. And I felt like, okay, my brain is finally clearing. Now, I had to be on national TV every day during that, which was, I don't recommend that to anybody trying to work full time while detoxing. Don't do it that way, everybody. But so you point out that this is a long journey. And, I'm always frustrated when I hear that insurance covers, okay, we'll cover 7 days of detox and 28 days of treatment, and that's enough. And I think that we have so much work to do with insurance companies and with medical personnel, doctors and others, fully understanding the disease and knowing that this isn't something you just snap your fingers and you're cured. There is no cure for addiction.
Sure.
There is treatment that works. We are examples of that. We received treatment and we are in remission from a disease that could kill us.
Sure.
But,
And, it's a disease, too, that will lie to you. I remember after my first bout of treatment, I'd gotten a DUI many years ago. And I remember leaving that treatment center, and I remember in a conversation telling my mother, hey, if I drink again, it's my choice, because I truly believed that I had some choice in the matter. I didn't realize that lack of power, that was my dilemma. I thought I had some choice, and the nature of the disease is that you do not have a choice. You are going to drink again, unless you're taking an action and you're spiritually fit. And those were just hokey, kind of foreign concepts that I had no understanding of. So if I had no understanding, even though I'd known many years before this that I had a problem, how are doctors and family members expected to understand without education? And they are doing a better job, at least my understanding is, in medical school. You used to get 1 hour of addiction training.
Isn't that amazing?
I think they're getting a little bit more.
They are. Yeah. My son is in medical school, and he's wrapping up medical school. He's in his 4th year right now. He got more than that, but fortunately he has a mom who has educated him a lot about substance use disorder. Let me go back to wrap up this interview. Let me go back to Lovelady and ask you about the magic of this very special place. When you and I spoke a few days ago, you said that when the women arrive, it's like the last house on the block, the last chance. And when they leave, they've had a life-changing experience. If you could, in your own words, describe the presence of God in this place. And you also said, God is close to the brokenhearted.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would, let's close the interview with just some final thoughts about Lovelady.
That's good. That's beautiful. And right after I got off the phone with you, I was standing in our founder's office and I'm looking out the window and I saw the Mobile County paddy wagon pull up from the Mobile County Jail. And I watched 4 women being escorted in 4-point restraints, shackles, handcuffs. And I wasn't down there when they came in and they were told, hey, you can take the handcuffs off of them because they belong to us now. But I could imagine, because I've been there a few times before, I can imagine them looking up and having hope and smiling. When I attend church services at Lovelady, the worship is so beautiful. The ladies are so vocal. Everybody has their hands up. And our executive director, Melinda, often remarks when she's up there doing a service and preaching, there are so many women that come up to the altar that when they leave that front row where they had been knelt down, she often is stepping on a literal puddle of tears. See, these are ladies that came thinking they had no other chance in life. And all of a sudden, they're finding hope and finding their purpose. So, in conclusion, it's the most remarkable place I've ever worked. It's the most remarkable place I've ever been. And I love that I have a job, that my job is go shout it from the rooftops, tell people all about it. And what I'll tell people, it's all God, right? And it's such an honor to represent all those women and children.
Beautifully put. And boy, are they lucky to have you, Frank.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Laurie.
Frank Long, the Director of Development at the Lovelady Center in Birmingham. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I would encourage our listeners who live in the state of Alabama, and particularly those who live in Birmingham, go visit the Lovelady Center. You won't regret it. It will change your life. Thank you for listening to One Day at a Time, a Yellowhammer News podcast presented by Longleaf Recovery and Wellness. Be sure to follow Yellowhammer News on Instagram, Facebook, and X. And follow me, Laurie Dew, on Facebook and Instagram.